I'm going to say that was a mulligan, and they're going to come back strong as ever. So the only player I'm really concerned about from the Broncos is Ronnie Hillman. I still think he's a low-end RB2 flex play because it'll be one of those weeks where you've got to look around and search for players to pick up and play. So he's likely going to start, but it just should be a rough go for him. Otherwise, you start all your Broncos playmakers. For the Jets, Chris Ivory, I think he's a flex. He's going up against a run defense, which is allowing a rush TD and a pass TD per game to his position. I don't see Chris Johnson contributing anything. And if he does, hey, he woke up. Hey, we'll talk about him next week on the waiver wire report. Otherwise, the only other person is Eric Decker, and he's a wide receiver 3 at best. And he's only going to be good if Geno Smith isn't put off by the coverage that Decker's going to demand from his former team. So if you got Decker, play him if you got him, but understand it's going to be a risky play this week. Broncos clobber the Jets.
And the Detroit Lions travel to the Minnesota Vikings.
Hey, by the way, can I do that? Can I say clobber? Can I take the extreme position?
You can say clobber. And
okay.
For our agreement. We get the cheers for us agreeing on one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just jumped out of my chair. That's how much that shocked me.
You're all amped up now.
I am.
All amped up. The Detroit Lions travel to the Minnesota Vikings. The Lions losing a heartbreaker to the Buffalo Bills. Again, adding to their Jekyll and Hyde complexion. We just don't know who to anticipate in this game. And now they travel to Minnesota, a team who seemed to get a lift 2 weeks ago when rookie quarterback Teddy Bridgewater manned the quarterback position. But he was missing last week. And the Vikings likewise, well, you know. But Bridgewater's back. He's back and better than ever. Well, we don't know what that means, but the Lions have one of the better defenses in the league that will flummox the crap out of you trying to figure out what happens when they collapse. They're averaging 74 yards allowed on the ground. That's going to put an awful lot of pressure on Bridgewater, who, yes, he may be healed, but you can't convince me he'll be 100%. I am going to pick the Lions on the road here.
Yeah, Keith, I'm going to agree with that one on you, too. And I actually wanted to start talking about something distinct and separate before we get into the fantasy, who to start, who to sit, and I want to talk about Calvin Johnson. Today it was reported, and you can find this on thefantasygreek.com, that Calvin Johnson, his ankle injury is a high ankle sprain. The indications are we don't know yet if he's going to play. Like to be able to say that he's not going to, so that there's some certainty into this weekend. I think the Lions would be doing a disservice to themselves and to Calvin Johnson to make him play on that ankle, because as we've seen in some instances players being able to play through it, and in other instances they just can't. And I would lean towards that. They're gimpy. They're not at full speed. They lose their performance. So I'm telling you that even if he plays, he'll be a decoy. He won't be very good, and everybody should consider benching him across the board unless there are some magical words about the way that he works out before the game. You don't even look at Calvin Johnson. Okay? Now that said, let's turn to the Vikings and let me tell you this. They've got a tough D, but the problem with them is they're tied for third most TDs allowed. Total of 16, 5 rush, 9 pass, 2 defensive touchdowns, which means I like the Lions in this game. I also like many of their players. The only players I like for the Vikings are going to be Matt Asiata and Jerick McKinnon, and I can't even say they're going to have big games. I look at Matt Asiata as a low RB2 and McKinnon as a flex play, and both shaky ones at that, but that's where the offense is going to flow through. The passing game, while it should be good, it probably won't be good enough, so there's no one else to really look at on the Vikings and go, yeah, I better play this guy. It just isn't. I'm curious to see how Jarius Wright does, because the last time Teddy Bridgewater was under center, Wright had an explosive game. If he has another one, I mean, I've already told people to pick up Wright, but if he has another one, he will definitely be a must-add next week. For the Lions, start Stafford. If healthy, start Reggie Bush. This is a great matchup for him in terms of the passing opportunities. You start Golden Tate because he should be the number one target for Matt Stafford. Erica Braun is a sneaky low tight end play. In other words, if you're in a jam or on a bye week and there's nobody else available except LeBron, he's going to be a decent play. And then you start the Lions defense against a rookie quarterback in a game that should be very low scoring. The Lions, they're number 2 in terms of scoring. They only allow an average of 15.8 points per game. Go Lions, roar, roar. You like when I do that.
Hold on, I'm writing down the timestamp so that I can make a clip out of that.
Oh, if I knew that, I would have done a better one.
Roar, roar. God help us.
For the listeners out there, I try to animate things just to keep things interesting. It is late night sports radio, after all.
Yes, we know you're tired and need the reason to stay awake. So
yes,
that's why Jim goes roar, because that'll
roar.
keep you.
Roar, roar. Lions, roar, roar.
I can't even say it with a straight face. We haven't even gotten to the Bengals yet. I can't imagine what kind of roar you're going to do for them. Anyway.
It better be better.
Oh my God, The New England Patriots travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. The Bills stealing that game away from the Lions that I just mentioned about. And the Patriots putting up a game where certain folks on this broadcast, not named Keith, want to say that the Patriots are back. Well, you can say what you want, but they're traveling to Buffalo, and the Bills, they play good defense. They can run the ball. The Patriots still haven't shown they can defend the run very well. I'm going to take Buffalo at home, and I will duck and cover for the blowback I'm about to get.
No, there's not going to be any blowback. What are you, crazy? Anyway, look, I like the Bills, and I really think that they've got a tremendous football club. But after what we saw last week with the Patriots and looking at some of these numbers, I don't think the Bills can handle the Patriots on the road. But in this division and in this matchup, I will say and admit anything can happen. That having been said, I like the Patriots for a number of reasons. The Bills give up a decent amount of touchdowns, 9 total, 7 to the pass, 2 to the rush. And so what we're going to end up seeing here is a game where Tom Brady, Julian Edelman, Robert Gronkowski, they're going to have to carry this, as well as Shane Vereen. If they just try to straight out run against the Bills, they definitely will get into a bind and potentially could lose this game. But when I look over at the Bills, I see them going up against a decent enough rush defense, and certainly their passing game won't be going. It's much better pass D than I think people are giving it credit for. So the only people on that side of the ball worth a play are going to be Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller. And I like Freddie Jacks over as an RB2 and C.J. Spiller as a flex. Sammy Watkins, he's a shaky wide receiver 3. If you can avoid him, I would seriously do that. And it's going to be interesting there in Buffalo. I know this is one of the big games for them, and we'll see what happens when the dust settles. Patriots on the road. I was gentle to you.
You were. I take it. Now, we have a game matching up 2 cats, so be careful with your roars here. The Carolina Panthers travel to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, who coming off a bye, put up an absolute egg against the New England Patriots last week. And the Carolina Panthers, who were on their heels, on the ropes last week against the Bears at halftime, overcame a 21-7 deficit, ended up taking that game on a last-minute touchdown pass by Cam Newton. And I said on Monday's show that raised a lot more questions about the Bengals than it did the Panthers or the Patriots. That it raised more questions about the Bengals than it answered about the Patriots. There. That was much better than the first time I tried to say that. And I still stand by that, but I do like the Bengals as a team. For whatever reason, they just didn't. They got out-executed to death the other night. So I am going to pick Cincinnati at home. Carolina is too much of a bipolar up-and-down team. It's not going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, but I just like the Bengals at home.
Yeah, in this cat fight, I'm taking the Bengals to bounce back. Use this as a bounce-back game at home against these Panthers. I like the Panthers. They've actually been playing much better than I thought that they would be. But their problem is they have no real running backs to speak of going up against a team that if you're going to go after them, that's the way to do it on the ground. Now, that does pose as potentially a good matchup for the running backs that they do have, but I wouldn't test that against a Bengals team that they must be infuriated at this loss over there in New England. So here's what we're talking about. If you've got Panthers, I would bench Cam Newton. I wouldn't even consider it. Kelvin Benjamin shapes up to be a wide receiver 2, and Greg Olsen is a tight end 1. If you're desperate for a running back, I'd consider Darren Reeves or Chris Abanaya, but I mean, you would have to be absolutely desperate to pick any of those players at this point, just because I think there's so many other better players out there. If you're looking at Bengals, I like Andy Dalton in this. I think he'll find a way to throw to somebody, anybody who's not named A.J. Green, because based on the report that we had today, it's his toe. It just didn't look good. He was in obvious pain and taken to the locker room and supposedly for further tests. Hopefully there's no ligament damage. But you're going to have to like Andy Dalton, and you'll have to like Mohamed Sanu, who'll make for a great start, as well as Gio Bernard. This is a defense that gives up the Panthers' defense. It gives up 130 rush yards in the ground and about 50 all-purpose yards to the running backs. It's a defense that's not playing well without Greg Hardy and the various injuries that they've had along their defensive line. So don't fear it. Play them. Bengals win.
Kelvin Benjamin's been a nice find for the Panthers because they, going into the season, you look at their wide receiver roster, and you're just like, what the hell are they doing? They're not giving Newton anybody to throw to. But it's, with the departure of Steve Smith, but he's been I expected him to be a red zone target. I think he's been so much more.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, Keith, and I wish they get him the ball a little bit more in the red zone. I'm hoping that they get it to him at least once this weekend. They should be able to. I mean, he's just such a good quality player for being a rookie. Can't wait to see him next season.
All right, let's do one more, and then we are a little bit over the halfway point. We'll take a break and then head downhill towards the rest of the show. The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the Cleveland Browns. Again, there's a lot of teams this year that have been Jekyll and Hyde, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are no exception. They play really well one week, and then you're just left scratching your head the next. On the flip side, the Cleveland Browns are 2-2, and that's probably 2 more wins than a lot of people thought they would have. Brian Hoyer finally played well to justify being the starter, not just the guy that didn't play as bad as Johnny Manziel in the preseason. But you look at this game, a division matchup, old school rivalry, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. But at the end of the day, Pittsburgh is still the better team, and I can't pick against them on the road. In this matchup, I'll take them on the road.
And I will too. These are 2 teams that are almost evenly matched. There are some differences, and they're subtle distinctions, but distinct enough that I think it will make a difference. The Browns give up a few more touchdowns than the Steelers do. They certainly are much weaker in their rush defense than the Steelers. I'm actually surprised to find that, and it's kind of strange to hear myself say it, but it's true. So, and there's nothing about their pass defense that's necessarily scary if you have any of the Steelers on your fantasy team. So Ben Roethlisberger can be a low quarterback 1. I'm hoping that you have a better option, but if you don't, you can roll with them. Le'Veon Bell is an absolute must-start. Was a top 5 running back this week. You just don't even think about him, start him. Same thing with Antonio Brown. I don't care who they put on him. Antonio Brown has a history with this team. There have been games where he's blown it up and he could do it again. And then Heath Miller. This is a rivalry he's no stranger to, and he's going to play his role. And he's actually been a pleasant surprise this season. I have him on one team, and he's doing enough for me, given the quality of the other players that I have, to be a positive contributor and to help me win fantasy football games. So I like him a lot. For the Browns, if they're going to go after the Steelers, their best bet in this particular matchup is likely going to be through Ben Tate. And the rest of it, it's your guess. Your guess is as good as mine as to who any other good contributor will be in the passing game. Certainly, the Steelers are susceptible to it. But there's so much spreading of the ball around, it's really hard to say who to play. I mean, you could look at Jordan Cameron as a low tight end 1, but he hasn't really blown anything up yet in the games that he's played in. I think he's had 1 good game. So in one league that I have him in, I was lucky enough to pick up Larry Donnell. I'm keeping him benched until he does something for me. Now, while you can play him, if you're like me and you have another good tight end to play over him, I would do that. I would wait until Jordan Cameron actually does something of substance to make it worthwhile to figure how you will play him each and every week. In the meantime, I got the Steelers on the road, Keith.
All right.